And I'm going to stay right here and fight for this lost cause. Even if this room gets filled with lies like these. And the Taylors and all their armies come marching into this place. Somebody will listen to it.
You're standing here today like a modern Mr. Smith goes to Washington. Must surely be making Jimmy Stewart smile.
I will speak until I can no longer speak. I will speak as long as it takes until the alarm is sounded from coast to coast that our Constitution is important, that your rights to trial by jury are precious, that no American should be killed by a drone on American soil without first being charged with a crime, without first being found to be guilty by a court.
That's what you call an audio mashup. Sound bites from Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Ted Cruz, who was lauding Rand Paul as he carried out an old-fashioned stem-winding filibuster on the floor of the Senate that went 12 hours and 53 minutes.
Lines were stemmed.
That's right.
During this filibuster.
Absolutely. There were stem winding going on there. Listen, the guy who sort of predicted this was Eli Lake. He saw it coming. Eli's now with us here. He's, of course, the national security correspondent and all-around smart guy from the Daily Beast. Hello, Eli. How are you?
Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, you saw this coming yesterday, and the issue was about drones, and there is an unusual coalition in the Senate who want to sort of pare back how drones are used.
Well, I would say what they ultimately want is they want some sort of due process if Americans are going to be targeted by drones. And I think they also want to begin to challenge and prod the president on explaining exactly when the war is going to end and what extraordinary powers he's going to use, as for the rest of the conduct of that war. So while this filibuster was about getting the president and the attorney general to say specifically they will not use drones against Americans on U.S. soil, really was a kind of window into a much broader debate about what I would call the war on terror, extraordinary powers of the executive branch.
Now, you have a couple of guys. You got Ron Paul, a Republican from Kentucky.
Rand Paul.
I'm sorry, did I say Ron
Yeah, it's all right. It's easy
Rand
to do.
Paul, sorry, my mistake. Rand Paul, Republican from Kentucky, and Ron Wyden, who's a Democrat from Oregon. You would think that these two men would have absolutely nothing in common, but yet they see eye to eye on this issue.
Absolutely. You had, during the Bush presidency, it was progressives in the Democratic Party that demanded the Office of Legal Counsel, Justice Department memos on the kind of, the what are called EITs, the enhanced interrogation techniques like waterboarding. And eventually, Obama was the one, because he was sort of in that camp of the Democratic Party in his first couple months in the presidency. I think within his first 2 months, he released a lot of those memos. This whole fight started because Ron Wyden, who's on the Senate Intelligence Committee, and Rand Paul said, I want to see your memos from the Justice Department saying, explaining your legal authority to kill Americans without due process. So it's a very much of a kind of a repeat of what happened in the Bush years. And Obama, you would think, actually would be part of that group. When he was a senator, he certainly sounded that way. Now, he did end up at times, voting with the Bush administration on things like the wiretap law known as FISA. But Obama, for the most part, when he was a senator, sounded an awful lot like Rand Paul and Ron Wyden.
Yeah, and I'm sure that your rapper heart was very excited when you saw Marco Rubio quote Wiz Khalifa and Jay-Z there during the filibuster. Was that did your mind just explode when that happened?
I thought that was one of the great moments in recent Senate history, and I also thought it was terrific because Rubio and Rand Paul are seen in some ways as the two kind of fighting for the soul of the Republican Party on foreign policy, national security. They both, I think, have ambitions to run, for the presidency in 2016.
Yes.
And I think, having talked to kind of both, people in the Republican Party and in the Senate, certainly they are eyeing each other as, I think, competitors in that respect. But in this respect, I thought it was really great to see Rubio supporting this guy who's going to challenge him probably in 2016.
Right.
And on a principle, at least on that principle, it really did tell us a lot about where the Republican Party is on these questions.
Well,
which is
certainly these new senators representing the Republican Party. Eli Lake, since you're the national security correspondent for Newsweek magazine, Daily Beast, I want to get you to comment on this latest news about North Korea. The word is out that they have vowed a preemptive nuclear strike against the United States. How serious is this? Is this saber rattling? Is this Dennis Rodman's foreign policy taking effect?
There's so many bad puns, which is, how's Obama going to rebound from that? Anyway, anyway, but I would say that we know that there's something that the North Koreans have developed called the Taepodong missile. It's a multi-stage missile that I don't think has ever really had a fully successful test.
Not really.
But that would be the kind of missile that could deliver a payload to the United States. So I do think it's saber-rattling in the sense that I don't think they have the ability to hit the United States yet. And keep in mind, North Korea is such a totally dysfunctional country. I'm not so sure that we should, just assume that their engineers are going to get it together to develop that kind of technology. That said, it does appear that there is. I mean, they have the ability to do a lot of other terrible things, like they can incinerate Seoul, the capital of South Korea, without even a nuclear weapon. They can do it with conventional, artillery, which they have pointed there. So there are a lot of terrible things they can do. I think I think we now know the nature of Kim Jong-un, the fairly new sort of supreme leader of North Korea, and he's not a moderate. He's not somebody who I think is willing to cut a deal. And this is in some ways, very sad. Doesn't look like there's going to be much hope for eventually ending that regime.
It's just interesting that a couple of days after Dennis Rodman was there, having these
the
talks.
kumbaya basketball moments there.
And like as soon as he clears the country, almost
by the way, we're going to hit you with a nuke.
By the way, we're going to nuke you preemptively.
Well, I think that they are where. I mean, listen, the notion that at this point, these sanctions would mean much. I mean, I was in North Korea in 2000 with Madeleine Albright. It is a complete Orwellian kind of almost a prison state. It's like frozen in amber at this point. They are the biggest threat right now to their own population. In my view, I think the smartest way probably to pressure them would be to go after the sort of ill-begotten gains of the leadership,
right,
and to specifically go after the people who are, living so the leaders of North Korea live unbelievably lavishly. The people of North Korea are living in almost kind of a virtual gulag, and we also can say that it's really the last kind of Stalinist regime. They have hundreds of thousands of people living in kind of virtual slavery. There was a recent book about the memoir of someone who was actually born in one of their prison camps, and it's incredibly sad. So I would just say, I don't know that sanctions against their autonomy are going to have any effect anyway, and, I'd hope that Obama's coming up with clever ways to pressure the leaders.
Thanks, Eli.
We'll have to leave it right there. Eli, always a pleasure.